All right. Dee Dee, did you say you wanted to say something, or I'll just get going? All right, cool. All right, so this class is basically going to be about ways to develop dojos. There's a lot of ways to construe that phrase. And so one of the things I want to start with from you guys is which of the 5 topics about this are what you would want to do the most. So in my mind, when I think about developing a dojo, to me, there's 5 main things you're trying to do, one more than another, or all of them equally, depending on your goals. So one is increasing the number of students you have. One is increasing the engagements of the students that you already have. The third one is developing the community and the connections between the students you have. The fourth is developing your upper ranks so that people are, once they become teachers, are deepening their knowledge. And the fourth is making a business that supports full-time instructors and the owner of the dojo. Different dojos have got different goals. Some of them are way more about 1 or 2 of those than the others. But I wanted to figure out, if you hear those 5 things, which ones would you say are the ones you would most want to work on developing in this conversation? So has anybody got any that jump out at you as immediately as like, that's it, I definitely need more students, or I definitely need to, increase the revenue of this thing as a business, or I definitely need to work on the community connections between the students, or the developing the upper ranks, or getting more engagement out of the students that are there? Or is it just all 5 all the time?
So what's the difference between increasing engagement, developing community between students? Engagement how?
So to me, I'm going to break down each of these. And one of the reasons I ask is because we could talk for an hour and a half about any one of these things. And so I want to figure out how to allot the time. But to me, the under my heading, more engagement from students, is about more attendance, better goal setting for them, and how you get them to put more into every class that they're in. Like, what are you doing about the way you run class, or the way you organize your school, that makes them put in more effort / that just makes them commit more to the time that they spend there. Whereas the developing the community is more when they're not at the dojo, how much of their mind is in the dojo, which sometimes is about what they learn in class, but also just what are you doing that's making it not just one thing about their life, but one of the central pivot points of their life.
Good, thanks.
So let's just start on them. And if you guys want, I'm going to then, I'm not hearing a specific push towards one or the other. So I'm going to try to sort of evenly space them. Elizabeth, did you have something?
Oh, yeah, if you're going to equally space them, that's great. I was going to say number of students, because we're actually in communication with a community center. We only spend a small amount of time in pre-COVID of going back. And so it might be helpful for the number 1, but that's fine if you're going to do them all equal.
Cool. And I think we'll naturally kind of fall into the ones we care the most about. So let's start with students. Obviously, if you're starting a new dojo, this is super critical stuff. If you're, trying to come back from a pandemic and build your student ranks back up, this stuff's really important. So this comes up all the time. So the first thing is about getting the word out. So I wanted to ask, what kind of marketing do you guys do? Like, how do people hear about your schools?
At Sunmin Chu, although we do some targeted advertising, kind of lower level stuff, but we do have a social media presence and a Facebook page for the people who follow that sort of thing. But our most successful mechanism is word of mouth, and telling your friends and telling your friends' friends.
Yep.
And along those lines also, the dojos that we've always had open always had really high exposure. So we got lucky that we didn't even have to really market it. I mean, we had high exposure. We combined that with having the students go out and put up posters in the community of the area, like especially at Florida Atlantic University or at NC State, just putting up posters, because if you have high exposure and you give, like, You know, someone that walked by your class and saw it, and then during the day they walk by a post, they go, I saw that class, man. So that's like a pop, pop, double pop. But we've always been lucky in that high exposure, really good for getting students, obviously. But given that extra pop, some people think they got the high exposure, that's all they have to do. You gotta add a secondary, so we would add just posters around campus or posters around town. That's a no cost exposure.
And
So
the
when did anybody got some others?
I was just gonna say, the community center we have, we've actually been getting calls these last 3 years due to COVID. You know, we've been having Zoom classes because they put out a newsletter. They put out a nice little magazine that goes, it's for the city of Raleigh.
Yeah, so everyone thought we were doing classes. So we got, during COVID so far, we've gotten 28 phone calls.
Of
Oh,
interest.
wow.
So,
But that, you know, of course, wouldn't be enough, just that newsletter and the community center. So that's why we wanted to know how other people were doing it.
Yeah. So as a general breakdown, and my experience and knowledge is not everybody. And one thing I would like to say is that I want to tell you about a couple of different markets that I've worked in, but the one thing I've noticed is they're all different. So what works in one town is not the same as what works in another town. So you kind of have to look at this based on how your city, your community works. Whatever you're doing for marketing, make it be focused, like at some point in that process of somebody seeing the marketing, that they are talking to you in the space where you do classes. Nothing sells, especially Kung Nu, like seeing it and meeting the people who are doing it. So whatever you do, try to get where they're in a conversation and they're in the space as best you can. But you know, if you look at paid advertising, I've seen things that people tell me work really well in another community, doesn't work well in mine, and vice versa. So you kind of got to feel that out. But as far as cost, radio, TV, print are just super high cost. And so unless you got a lot of money to put into it, or you want to go in with other people, those are really expensive. Facebook has been the gold standard for a while, just because you can target it and set your budget. That's waning a little bit, but it's still a way that you can put messages in front of people real fast. Things that go to that get, you know, leaflets and mail order things, that's a good way to do a blast, where you can go get with the post office and have them send postcards to people, because again, you can target the addresses within a zone, so you can do a little homework and get the exact area that you're looking at and just mail it to people within exactly a mile of the dojo or something like that. But all of those things are not what's done the most for me personally. They're nice for a little immediate boost. The bigger thing to me is a local connection thing. So if you can have your students put stuff up in their businesses, whether that's posters or leaflets, just because they're then going to talk to this, somebody will say, tell me about this, and then they'll be like, oh, I love it, you know, my kids go there or I go there and it's great. Because now you get a human connection from somebody they already trust. You know, I like to support the phone book for the local elementary schools, just and pay for how they make their phone book, which might be $250 or $300, but then the whole back of their phone book says Unity Martial Arts and community stuff, and we get to say that. So it's helpful to them, and it's pretty directly into the hands of the people that are our market. And so those things you got to look out for a little bit more. You got to figure out where they are, because they don't always come knocking and ask you to do it. You got to kind of go look and see where that stuff is. The next thing would be
at the exact right time. And I don't, obviously.
The next thing would be doing community seminars. The thing I like about doing free seminars is that I want to get people to come in the door. The thing you got to really, when you're trying to figure out how to get people to come in for like a big free community seminar, the critical thing is make it something they're getting that's really exciting. Like to us, the idea that you would learn about self-defense by itself is exciting, but that doesn't necessarily jump out to everybody immediately. And so you gotta make it a little bit more specific. They have to understand why they want to be there. So I like to say, like, I'll do a self-defense seminar in the summer every year that's specifically about hey, your kid's going off to college. We're going to do 2 hours on working about that specifically. And they can imagine why they want to be there much more than if it's just general self-defense every time. And so if you tailor it a little bit, and then you can actually go to the different groups and say, hey, we're doing this free seminar for kids going off to college, you know, XYZ, and get your folks to go plug it in their various communities so you can get a nice.
You know, you make a good point there, Tanner, because in our classes, we've always, at the end of class, you know, when new beginners come in, we stop, we all say our name, and we always ask each student to say, hey, why did you start the martial arts? And if you listen to your group carefully, they're going to tell you what you might want to target that class for. Because you hear say, wow, all these people started for that reason. Well, maybe we ought to make a class that they can come to and say, hey, we invite you to come do it because of this. Because that's an easy way to find out what might be a buzzword that'll get them in.
Right.
Yeah.
Or as a Summing Shu in 1983, if we sit around and say, how'd you guys start martial arts? 95% of the people would say like, I met this guy named Jack Hiley, and he convinced me to come in. So you got to find your Jack Hiley and be like, hey, get out there, man. What are you doing working? Go talk to people about the dojo. The fairs, if you ever do a fair and you're going to do a booth at a fair, whatever you do, don't just sit there and wait for people to come talk to you. You got to do 2 things at a fair that are really important. You got to have a super fun activity that's going on that is like nobody can walk by without participating in. And you got to have something you're giving away that everybody would like, period. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. So make sure you got something just exciting going on. And if you're trying to figure out who's going to work the booth at the fair, send your Energizer bunnies in there. Don't send in your folks that are going to get tired and sit down and wait, because they don't go on forever. And it's a great way to meet folks if there's something really exciting going on. And, you know, give away a bunch of t-shirts. I know it's tough to, you know, you spend like $12 a shirt making shirts and you're like, I can just give away 40 of these shirts. But, you know, somebody paying dues for a few months totally covers the cost of those shirts. So go get some new students. And then let's see. Okay, then the next one is like Robert was saying, go out and, you know, putting signs up, just make sure there are places that agree to let you have signs up. But putting signs out, you know, putting these like yard signs in, just stuff that's in people's face. In marketing, you know, marketing is kind of sorcerous. Nobody completely understands exactly how marketing gets to people, but one of the best sort of litmus tests for if your marketing is working is that if you ask them how did you come in, it always feels sort of squishy to them, but it's generally that they saw something and they heard something, then they talked to someone, then they saw something again. And then later on when they said, hey, I want to take martial arts, they were like, I feel like I've heard of a place. So it's like, you kind of want to surround them with little cues. And then when they go, oh, I want to do this. That's why the word of mouth thing is so great. It's people end up in a conversation about martial arts because somebody was asking about taking martial arts. And if the response then is, oh yeah, you should come into the dojo, it's great. They're already ready. They've already decided they're looking for something. So those are the different categories of marketing. And like I said, I've met people in some communities where those work in incredibly different ways. Like they'll say like, this community is all about bartering and nobody is here all summer and they don't do XYZ. Some places after school stuff is a great way to get going, and some places they don't do anything after school. So you just gotta know what's up in your community. So the second big piece about increasing students is retention. If you're gaining students and losing students, you're not really increasing the population of your school. So retention is as important for you as getting new students is. If you imagine like I could get a new student and they might stay for a year or two, or I could just keep one of the students that was going to quit for 2 more years. It's actually easier to keep somebody from quitting than it is to get a brand new person. So one of the things you can do that's really useful is just have a spreadsheet that shows you when people start, when they stop, you know, and keep track of some basic metrics of what they do while they're training. when did they test? How did this go? And then, spreadsheets are math. So you can then take that and go, well, we did it for 5 years, or if you're lucky, you've got this all in a program somewhere and you can call it up and make a spreadsheet out of it. And you can look at it and say like, oh, weird, everybody quits at Greenbelt, or like there's this spike, or most people stop at 2.5 years. What's going on at 2.5 years in Greenbelt? And then you go look at your classes and you get some people that quit right after Greenbelt and you say, hey, what happened? Oh, I just couldn't really figure out like how to apply myself. It seemed like everything was going to get a lot harder and I wasn't sure if I was up to it. And then you say like, what are we doing wrong? Like, obviously it gets harder after that. Why are they not fired up about it? Why do they feel like they can't do it? And really take a close look at that, because your school is going to have its own little blueprint of where people are dropping out. And then that's the place you want to focus on. You might see 2 spikes. You might see like they drop out at 2 brown stripes, or they drop out at, right after the black belts, wherever. And so then you look at what are we doing at those ranks? What are we doing at that period of time? And how can we add to that or change that or re-envision that so that we're not losing people at that point. Another thing is really talk to people who leave and find out why they left. Not everybody will tell you, but a lot of people will. And that, just take it real seriously. Another retention tip is really make sure that you are clear on the progress of each student and that they are clear on what you consider progress. So as you're moving forward, watch out for just letting somebody roll in your mind thinking like they just need a couple more months to work on this and then they'll be fine. And then the next thing you know, they're getting really down about their training because there wasn't that communication about what are my goals, what are your goals. Really make sure you're getting what you need and I'm communicating to you what I need. So that can be a big benefit as far as that retention. And then really focus on what are they increasing with. I have a tendency to look at students and say, I need that student to marinate in this rank for another 3 months, which is great. And they do, they're much more prepared for these tests, but that student needs to see how they're improving. And so sometimes you might have to take a step and have them chart out like, here's how we're improving your flexibility over this time. Here's how we're improving your strength, your stamina. Here's what we're doing to make you move forward. On the off chance that just the idea of marinating in rank and getting those repetitions doesn't motivate them the same way. And then make sure that they are challenged and developmental and developing mentally and socially as well as physically. You want them to develop physically, but they can be doing great physically and then leave because they need more community or they need something that has more meaning to them. And you'd be like, oh, but we do. I was going to tell you about that later. Make sure that they are physically stimulated, but also mentally stimulated and socially stimulated. And so, we do that with our philosophies, with our discussions. We really try to push that with community, which we'll get to in a little while. So have you guys noticed a particular retention point? Have you guys noticed people stopping at a particular point? Is there a rank where you tend to lose people? Has anybody noticed this?
Yeah, sure.
Where does it happen more than others? Where other times?
Well, there's a difference between when we taught like at our college school versus our local community school. The local community school, people quit. At the college, people quit more associated with school rotation. That
When they graduate.
when they graduate or when they're done with a semester, they go away for a summer and they come back, they don't pick up the same thing when they come back. But in the community,
right,
in our school, there's always been the higher ranks. We haven't had much of a problem getting them up to green and brown belt, and then the higher ranks, the challenge of the higher ranks, where we had to, take a look at our approach to that.
And then, when people go and they start families or they're starting early on in their career,
Yeah, we tell our students, try not to
Okay.
have babies, try not to have babies until you were showed on. It's not true, but you get these
Right.
young kids coming in, they haven't got their own personal family yet, and they don't even have their career yet, and then you lose them to career.
Right. So there's two big ones that you mentioned there. The summer one is a big one for both for the college schools, but I mean, even if you've got a school that's not based around college students, lots of people dip out for the summer when they want to take 2 months off and go do something else. And 2 months of not training is like sliding back 5 or 6 months for most people. One of the things you can consider is how can you keep them engaged over the summer, even if they are traveling or doing camps or wandering from place to place or doing something else, whether that's doing some kind of, constant connection, Facebook thing online, coming up with a series of dojo challenges for folks that are going to track them wherever and really encourage, like, yeah, you're in the Bahamas, show me this kata on the beach, and just like build in the idea that obviously a lot of people are going to blow to the winds over this time. But yeah, the summer is a big challenge for everybody. I would encourage you guys to come up with a summer crossover plan that's just about assuming people are going to are going to come at this thinking they're going to take a break, whether that's, I'm going home from college or just summer's crazy. And build that in and really think about it, and don't talk about it like, oh no, you're taking a break, the rest of us are going to stay here and work hard, but build it in like, obviously many people are doing this, here's how you're going to handle this, we're going to do A and B and C, and it's going to be super fun, we can't wait to see you guys do this summer stuff. And then the for me, and then we're going to get to this one in a second, is the community. When it comes to like people, we just had Ming just had her baby, super tricky to train. One of the big things is get that baby in here. Get where we're taking care of the baby as much as we can, and then we've got Ming back. But yeah, making your dojo about family keeps people in there during family life changes. I will say one of the biggest things to me that most people miss out on is lead capture. And what lead capture means is if anybody contacts you in any way about training, remember that they've already made a decision that they want to do something like what you're offering, and that they've come to you as one of the few places they're willing to follow up with. So don't think of it like you're bothering them to keep checking in on them to see if until they can get into the dojo and see what it's like, or follow up after that. Really take that seriously. It's not an imposition. People will say, obviously you could be a jerk about it, but don't. But if somebody calls and leaves a message on the phone, I remember at Sun Ming Shu for years would be like, it wouldn't, if you weren't right there to pick up the phone, like who knows how many people called that place wanting to train. But get the messages, write down important information about them, make sure somebody gets back to them really fast. And then when they inevitably have some reason why they can't come in right away, write it down and schedule calling them back, and not being pushy about it, but just, when they're like, well, I couldn't come in because so-and-so got sick, a week later, call up and be like, hey, how are you guys, is everybody get feeling better? And just check in, make sure they know that you remember who they were, why they were calling, and just, keep persistently saying like, would love to have you guys come in. And if they say, well, we want to come in, but we're going to come in 3 weeks, be like, awesome, I can't wait to see you then. But then write a note down. The default for people is to forget and not come in. They didn't just suddenly start hating you. You haven't done anything. They called you, they want to take karate. They're just, life is crazy and they're all over the place. I would say this is one of the biggest lessons. We made these things. It's disappearing. There we go. Anyway, what it is it's a little pad that's by the phone. And so it just takes all the relevant information from somebody. So when they call, you won't forget to ask, like, what are the names of the people that are calling? What are their ages? What's the parent name if they're a minor? Phone, email, what are they interested in? How did they hear about us? Did somebody refer them? Any particular notes? And then you've got this right there and you can follow up on it and you sort of check it off once they come in. following up on your leads is one of the biggest places where people lose students, is not
Tim, let me ask you
following
a
up.
question. Let me ask you a question. Do you train your phone people? Because that could, to an untrained person, that could sound like an interrogation almost.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, role play it out. Role play out. How do you answer the phone? How do you answer the main 5 or 6 questions? Everybody's got the same questions. And most of them, if it's a giant conversation, for us leads to, so we have these free intros where we spend 30 minutes orienting you to the dojo and how we do things and telling you everything about all our programs and letting you try some stuff and answering all kinds of crazy questions. Would you mind coming in and, you know, doing one of those? Once they book that, by booking it, they enter most of the information that we would be looking for. So then we don't have to interrogate them so much. All that stuff's on the little registration for the free intro. And so what I'll do is, and I don't say, hey, go sign up for it, because again, they get distracted and they forget all about it. I say, hey, I'm right on the thing. I can fill it out for you. What day is best for you? Let's see, it wants to know the student's name, the age, and now I'm just filling in the form for them, and they're happy to fill in the information. Yeah, I really like the intros and having people come in and work with them one-on-one, because it's really a nice way to follow up with folks and a really good way to orient them so they don't show up in the first class and feel out of sorts. You know, show them how we bow in, how do we line up. Here's the thing we're going to work on this week for your first class. So you'll already kind of be ahead of the game, and you'll know sort of what we're doing. And, you know, do that for 25, 30 minutes and then jump right into class. Does anybody have any other questions about it? And that's my increasing students bit for us staying on schedule. Does anybody have any particular questions inside or outside of that about adding new students?
Have that form available someplace, because we'd like to use something like that, your intake.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. And I will say, once we made the online one, these, we still use them, but we don't need them quite as much, because now we're just like, hey, let me put you online. But yeah, I'd be happy to give you this.
I'm gonna create a Google form that's like whatever you give, you have something like that. That's what it's for.
Cool.
You do
Yeah.
you do your intro classes for kids mandatory with parents present?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to be able to have the parents ask questions. And I want to just have one of the kids. If there's 2 siblings, we do them in 2 separate things, so that we can, unless they like really desperately need it to be that way. Because I want to see how the kid acts, you know, absent the sibling.
Mark just asked a question in the chat. I don't know why he's not speaking up, or if he can.
He might have a screaming baby.
He said something about, do you have a certain schedule for when you accept students, or do you take them all the time?
In an ideal world, I would love to do it as big classes that all start at once, but at the moment we're just letting them flow in whenever. We especially for kids, we've started doing a rotating curriculum for the kids classes, and so it does not matter when they start now. It flows super easy when we add a new kid in, and that's a whole nother topic for something Michael Hornback came up with that's been amazing for us over the last year. All right, let's see. Okay, so I'm going to get to engagement, which is sort of related. So when we want students to come to class more, I know that there's a big difference between if you've got 5 or 6 classes available for that rank and age per week, and if you've got 2. If you've got 2, you might just be being, can you come to 2 instead of 1? Or you might be wanting them to come to 2 and Kata class, or whatever you're trying to get to do. Remember that you kind of have this, you know, people really want to do this and they really want to get good at it and get recognized for getting good at it. And an adult especially, usually that's pretty clear that the amount of time you put in is going to equal the amount of progress you get out. But remember that a lot of sports where somebody's trying to achieve the level of coordination and fitness and ability that we're going for, train a couple hours a day, if not 4 hours a day. You know, if they were going to join the football team and try to get really good at it, they would be there all afternoon after school. And yet some folks think their kid's going to do karate 1 hour a week and get great at it. And so I want to communicate what I expect out of how much time I think they should be training. And so if you have got the way you teach really targeted at, I need them to come 2 times a week, just be really clear about that. And make sure that when you're talking about it, talk about it in terms of, we expect them to progress at about this rate, assuming they can train twice a week and do these other things that we're asking. So that if somebody's doing a lot less than that, they understand it's not being punitive. It's just like we're sort of creating a different timeline for you because based on the coming once a week. We like to do offering more cross training for people. So I like to have classes, if I've got an hour and a half beginners class and I'm trying to teach a lot of new techniques, I want to rep those and get some intensity, but I also want to have some classes that are just reps and intensity. And so I'd like to have, we just have we call it our fitness kickboxing class, but really it's about taking what you've learned and going hard with it and getting a really solid workout for another hour or 2 during the week. Or the throws and applications class, or the Tai Chi class. Just take the pieces that it would be good if they had another hour or 2, and see if you can't have those as sort of other cross-training prongs in what you do. I recommend you have, if your school is more on people do things 2 times a week, make sure you have 2 to 4 opportunities to do those, because they can be their own separate program. So we have like a Tai Chi program. Some people just do Tai Chi, but it feeds people into Kung Nu, and people that are doing Kung Nu can take the Tai Chi, but also, parents that are here waiting for kids see that there's a Tai Chi class, and then suddenly you've got their parents or grandparents, and you're sort of increasing the amount of commitment a family has towards being there and doing different activities. But you got to look at what you think your students need more of and what your group is excited about, what your facility can handle. And then that's how you would figure out what you can add in. If you're in a situation where you guys like have a space for just a few hours, a few times a week, look at things that you can do outside of the dojo as a group that'll meet those needs. We did a thing when we first started in Arkansas. There's a mountain here called Pinnacle Mountain. And so for a while, as we were trying to build up just the students' strength, there's plenty in class, but then we would go, every 2 or 3 weeks, we'd go to the mountain and go up every 1/10 of a mile up the mountain. You'd stop and do, there were these markers that go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then 10 east or west, depending on which peak you went to. So you'd do 10 push-ups plus the number on the sign at each sign. And so you're climbing the mountain and doing sets of push-ups all the way up and all the way down. And then if you're getting really good at it, you face down the mountain, so your feet are up higher and all this thing. You're like finding rocks, but you're all doing it as a community and it's fun. And then you go eat a burrito and it's great. But they're getting really strong, right? And you're tying them together and giving them stuff to do outside of class. Really, anything you can do to personalize goal setting for the students helps them with engagement. So, we've tried a bunch of different things over the years, but your community will vary. So I liked, starting I like to do it right after training camp, just because people are hyped up and it feels like it's a year of growth leading up to the next one. And also then maybe they'll work on it over the summer. But start with a set of goals. By next training camp, I want to be blah. I want to be able to do this. I want to learn this. And then post them on the wall in the dojo. And then talk about them and work on them and use each other for motivation all throughout the year. It's really important for you as a sensei to know what your students' personal goals are. So if you are really focusing on strength and somebody's got like kind of a hurt shoulder and they're pretty strong, but they don't want to mess their shoulder up anymore. And they're like, what I really want is to be more fluid and have better balance. But you've been focusing a whole lot on push-ups because 2 other people in their class can't do them very well at all. You want to make sure that what, if you got a set of students and and you've heard what their personal goals are, it's a lot easier to remember to tap into those things in class, and make sure there is this balancing part of class where you're focusing on what that student is fired up about and trying to make progress with. And if you have the time and the resources, come up with a training plan for those students and say, because it's a set of basic stuff. I'd like to be able to be more flexible. I'd like more balance. I'd like to be stronger. I'd like to have, less pain. There's a series of them. You could come up with a series of, this is your daily workout. This is the dietary change. This is the thing I want you to work on. And then we're just going to check in on it. And so you can make the little, like, pull the flyer out for the how to get in the splits kind of thing. And then get excited about them meeting their goals on the level that you get excited about them getting promoted. In a lot of ways, them getting promotions means more to the instructors because we know what those ranks mean to us. And to them, it's just like this generic kudos. But when it's them, if their goal is to get in the splits and they get there, like that was something that's personally interesting to them. So make sure you make a big deal out of it. Depending on and don't worry about if they're an adult, you can still give them stickers and popsicles. They get super excited. But get excited with them about what they're trying to work on. Depending on your community, tracking this stuff publicly can be either helpful or intimidating. If you feel like attendance is something you want to push harder, like it feels like people aren't coming in as often as they could be, even if you have a digital attendance thing, keeping track of attendance on the wall is motivating to somebody who's like, well, I've been coming for the last 4 months. And then they look down and they realize this other person has come 5 times as much of you in that 4 months. That might be why they're testing and you're not. And anyway, so seeing that on the wall, a lot of times it helps people put those pieces together in their own mind. But you can put up anything you value. And if you realize that you as a community are valuing a specific thing or you're behind in a certain way and you need to push that, attach some rewards to it and make it interactive. If you realize like, wow, there's not very many people here who can get in the splits, make that a competition that you're all working on and have, we're going to have these prizes that are going to go out every quarter, every time somebody can get in the splits, or we're going to track it and we're going to make a big deal out of it. Kids especially get super excited about it. If somebody else gets acknowledged for something, they want to know how they can work towards getting that same acknowledgement. But adults get in the camaraderie of it. And so both groups are really helped by public goal tracking. The rewards are particularly fun for the kids. If they see a reward that they wish they had, and it's got to be something they wish they had. It can't just be like, you get these bottle caps that say Summoning Shoe on them. It's got to be something they really want. And so, we give away, if somebody refers somebody to Unity and that person starts, we give them a $50 gift certificate to a locally owned business. But we did a promotion this year that was like, if you refer 3 people, you get this, like, these super fancy like Apple earbuds or this other thing that was basically a bunch of stuff that cost $150. But it seemed really, really like a big deal to them because it was this huge prize. It was like, if you can sign up 5 people, I'll give you an Oculus that you can have. And they're like, what? An Oculus? That's amazing. But you did the math. That's just what they cost at Costco. So you're getting your $50 things in one prize, but it's very tangible to them and it gets really exciting. So let's see. Is there any other kind of engagement, like way that you wish students would engage more or make more progress? Anybody?
Can you talk about like some of the competition you do with like food drives and stuff? Because I feel like that's pretty engaging as well.
Right. Well, and this gets into one of my last things, but I'll go ahead and mention it now. So like we will do a lot of different activities that have to do with community service or sort of extracurricular activities. But to me, it's really important that the highest ranks in the dojo are not coordinating any of that. I want to use all those as leadership development opportunities. So like when we do food drives, it'll be because one of the brown belts likes this organization and wants to do a food drive. And I'll sort of coach them on how to do that well, and then try to take a step back and let them push it. Because I want to sort of coach them on how to run a really good event like that. But it does really help as far as building, goodwill with your community. If you're doing a food drive, you can get, news coverage, you can get, the radio to call you about it. You can get, do press releases. You can turn that into a lot of media attention. But anything like the list of stuff we've got is like, food drives, sparring tournaments, camping trips, newsletters, dance parties.
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
We made it a requirement for like one black stripe and above for those people that really thought they should go on to put together some type of community-based project. It could be a kickathon. One person did those collection of shoebox things where they were items that were going to get mailed out to overseas for needy kids, different organizations. They were food drives, any type of community event. And they would give us a little outline and we would help them make it happen. So like you said, it helped them see that they were part of a bigger group. They could think out of the box. And then we would just help make it all available to them. One year we did an Easter egg hunt for this preschool group through one of the community colleges. And they wanted to use the dojo. So we let somebody do the whole thing. So.
Yep. Yeah, Summing Shoe does a huge like haunted house. That's brilliant. You guys definitely like make sure you're inviting some, some part of the community that would really,
one of the
get their
groups
minds
that
blown
seems,
by that.
one of the groups that seems to get lost in these activities is the preschoolers. All the activities seem to be for like kids like 6 and up. So when we would host tournaments or events, we would have a special activity time for just the preschoolers for like 45 minutes to an hour, where we would set up the dojo in the most outrageous obstacle course ever. And they could go through it, and all the brown belts and above had to participate in setting it up, being the ogres, et cetera, et cetera. And they would get a stamp after going through the whole thing each time. And it would get stamped all up their arm, around their face. And the parents ate it up because their kids were engaging in healthy activity, competition with just themselves. And yet it was all physical activity. And then we'd give them have a special ribbon made up just for those kids and a whole box of treats. Company that you can use is Oriental Trading Company. Great company that has very inexpensive materials for kids of all ages, really inexpensive. So I highly recommend to think about the younger kids, the really small kids that often get left out.
Yeah, especially since a lot of times you've got a student that's really engaged and they have a younger sibling that's very small that loves the idea of the dojo, but hasn't even started classes yet. So an event like that makes them feel special and engaged, and like they can come in. A lot of times that's what they needed to cross over from, oh, that's too scary. I want to do it, but I haven't figured out how. And then suddenly they're engaged in this activity and boom, they're in. And then they can't quit. All right, so the next one, and that's a really good segue into topic 3, which is developing community. I think this one is really huge. To me, I trained in 4 or 5 other martial arts in between when I started as a kid. And then when I moved away, there was no Kung Nu in Little Rock when I moved here. And I just tried all sorts of things. And when I moved back to Atlanta and I went back to the dojo, with that perspective, I realized one of the things that was missing from most of the styles that I had really spent time with was this developed community. and it was sort of centered around, there were a lot of things that contribute to it, but and then as I went through, you know, when I first started teaching at Sunming and Sunming had some kids, but it was also like super hot in there, and a lot of people would quit over the summer, or like if, you know, a parent would come in with a kid, they'd just be like, whew, like I can't even sit in here, it's so hot. And so, you know, as I moved through that and was trying to think about how to stay in my own place, one of the things I really wanted to focus on was I wanted to make sure that like a parent who came in not only felt like they belonged, the kid belonged, the little kid, the grandparent that came in all belonged, that the place was safe, that the people were competent, and that it made sense to them to just engage as a whole family. You know, there were some places in town that had really rubbed people wrong by really focusing on the kid who was trying to take class, but just sort of milking the parents for money and not worrying about if they were uncomfortable while they were there. And so I was realizing that Little Rock in particular was feeling like when we go into a place, we don't feel like we all are welcome. We feel like our kid and our money are welcome, but we don't feel like there's engagement for the whole family. So I started trying to figure out how to do that early on, and I've tried a lot of different things. And again, I would say your community will vary, but these are the things I've come up with, and then I'm curious to hear if you guys have some more. So identify your bonds. Like, what is it that and if you have a brand new dojo, I would say you don't have to identify your bonds. You just have to be really true to yourself. If people come in and they want to train in a way that's different than you want to teach them, make sure they understand that's not what we're doing. If they don't want to train the way you're going to train, they'll leave. But if you have enough people in your dojo that are working on it in the way you want to work on it, that resonance builds up and builds up and builds up. And eventually everybody who wants to train that way is drawn there. Other people will refer them to you because they'll be like, you know, you seem like one of Tanner's students, not one of mine. And that's when you know you really got your frequency built up. And so figure out what your community is connected by, and then add activities to it that build that aspect of your community, right? And that's going to look different for every community. But some of the things are very similar, and it's really important that everything you do looks really good to at least 2 members of the family, right? It should really be exciting to, like, if I do a you know, an event, I want it to be exciting for a kid and a parent and a grandparent, ideally. So I want it to be clear that the activity is both available to all of them and really interesting to most of them, as opposed to really singling them out. I like to make the whole family feel engaged, even if engagement is here, take my kid, or, you know, I'm going to do this, you know, thank you for holding them while I do this other thing. So one of the things you can ask yourself is, what do you offer other family members who aren't the first person that came in? So if a parent starts training with you and they love it, if they have kids, does it feel to the kids like it makes sense how they would be involved and what the benefit of the parent and the kid being there together is? If it's not super obvious, you might want to change something, add something, or make it obvious, or just communicate it better. If a kid comes in and they're having a great time and the parents don't see how they could get involved immediately, think about how you can communicate that better. You know, at the very least, give them a huge discount to come check it out. But look at ways that parents and kids can work together. It can be really complicated to have a whole separate class for parents and kids train together all the time, but you could have one class a week where they do that. You could have one event during the month where they do that. Or you could work on ways that they can train at home together and coach them through that. Like, here's a homework assignment for this week. You know, if your parent and your kids both do this, here's a thing you're going to do together in preparation for XYZ. Just don't make them figure it out. Say, here's how you're going to do it together. You know, here's what your grandparents are going to do with this class. You know, here's how whoever is going to be engaged. But be creative about that for them. Don't ask them to be creative about that. Sometimes they'll surprise you, but for the most part, be the creative one. And then if you have a large dojo, and you are spending a lot of time there teaching, and I say to you, you should have 5 hours of extracurricular activities for your dojo every week, you may, let out a long, slow breath and be like, but my spouse is already like, please come home from the dojo at some point. This is where you make leadership opportunities for other people in your dojo. Try to spread that out. You don't have to take it all on. They just went on a big camping trip that I didn't go on a few weeks ago. I would have enjoyed it, but I was exhausted. So I spent time with my kids, but they had a great time, and that was awesome. So, let those, you don't have to be the central figure at every single thing, because your family needs it too. Let's see. Yeah, really look at how your space looks to a mom, to a grandma, to a grandfather, to a little kid. Look at your, if you mostly teach adults, just ask yourself is there something a kid is going to get into in my space that makes it feel to an adult like it's not safe for their kid? If it's, if you have a space where the bathroom is not super clean, think about what that says to a mom that's thinking about signing their kid up. Like, really look at it through the eyes of, is this place safe and sanitary and engaging for every member of a family, as opposed to the kid that's got blinders on. They're like, if we're going to jump over stuff and shout and kick things and get stickers, then I don't care if there's, trash on the floor. Think about it from the perspective of how it feels for a whole family coming in there. And then, yeah.
You want,
Oh, now you're muted, Ricky. You weren't muted before. You're still muted. So, Ricky, you're still muted.
am I unmuted now?
Yes.
You
Yes.
want to have your dojo be a Nordstrom's, not a Walmart. You want to have your dojo crystal clean, because men, when they come into the dojo, want to see all of your equipment. And women, when they come into the dojo, want to see that it's clean and safe. So you have to meet both needs. And then there's the couple that wants to make sure that you're a qualified instructor. And then there's a person that comes in and wants to say, what are you going to do for my kid? I want my kid to learn discipline. And in the back of your head going, God, that's a tall order, but that's what they just said. So your dojo has to meet all these different hats that people are wearing, all these different ideas. It has to be perfectly clean all the time. It has to be safe. You have to meet the male side and the female side and their different views.
Definitely. The next piece of this is the leadership development part of the community. There's a next one for upper ranks. And this is, the great gold star of your dojo is, do people stay long enough to be teachers and leaders and really develop long-term? And so what are the things that make them stay longer than just their black belt and really become a teacher and a leader? There's a few things that are common all across the board, but your community also may vary, So one of the things that I want to look at is, are your upper rank students still students, or have they switched to just being teachers who you have to stretch to learn? Okay. Really look at that closely. You got to structure your upper ranks time in the martial arts to make sure they see themselves as having a lot to learn, and how they're going to learn it and how they're going to work on it. It's one of the easiest things to get complacent about, is to just be like, already got my black belt, learning these 3 forms for a few years from now, but other than that, we're good. You're not, and you're going to burn out. So you got to have something you're working on, something you're stimulated by, something you're excited about. And you got to make sure that you're pushing that. the as the top of that, if you're the head of your school, you got to be obviously make yourself still vulnerable so that you don't feel like you have to know everything. You got to make sure that you are still learning and that your students see you still learning, and the students being the upper ranks as well. If you've got a need on that is, you know, super good at lots of stuff, and you act like you know everything, they'll start getting in their mind that being higher rank means not learning things and being in charge. But the longevity of a student is going to be directly related to how stimulated they stay. So it's really good to get with your black belts if you have several of them, and you want to understand, what are they still learning? What are they learning? What's motivating them? Are they not motivated? And be really careful about having people teach your students who are not feeling motivated and not currently learning. There's a really different feeling in a class where your teacher doesn't feel excited about information than in a class where, you know, your teacher just got done learning a new thing and there's a new thing that they're working on and they got 2 goals and they're going to be very fired up. So that's one of the easiest things to keep stepping back to is, you know, am I once people get their black belts, do I still have a pathway for them besides just sit in this rank for a while and then you're going to test again and teach classes. You got to watch out for teachers that are not students. That's all I'm saying, because it doesn't end up with the kind of Q rank students that you guys are going to want. Let's see. So the other thing that I think is super important about keeping people long term is making sure that you visualize how the community of your dojo is going to change because of the personality of the new leaders that are growing under you. Because if they don't have a stake in it, the best leaders are going to leave you and go start another dojo, right? Because they'll be like, what you did is beautiful for you, but I'm a different person and I want to do it a slightly different way. So if you would like them to still be at that dojo, you got to see how is it growing to be more like their goals as well. How do they have a stake in this? Do they see the future of it? Do they see themselves as the future of your dojo, or do they see themselves as just one of the students? Are they just one of the foot soldiers, right?
I have a question. Wait.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you pay your instructors?
I've got both. So I have 2 full-time instructors, and then we've got 5 that are volunteers.
Okay,
And
on your
so-
full-time instructors, what do you pay them? And how many hours a week is that?
Let's see. Galen and Chris work about 37 hours a week, and they
Teaching?
no. I basically we also do like the software, the management, the groundskeeping. Just our training is included in their pay, and so we work out all morning from 9 to 12 is just us with each other, and then from 3:30 to 8:30 is them with the folks, and they'll take different days off so that it comes out to about 36, 38 hours a week.
So what
And you're
kind,
asking what they get paid?
what kind of salary is that for a full-time teacher?
Right now they get about 36, but it goes up as the dojo grows. So basically I've tied,
Are you talking 36K a year or $36
Yeah.
an hour? 36,
no, 36K a year.
you supply them with benefits?
So they are in a dojo, like ownership sharing. The idea is that by the time they're in their 50s, that they'll own a significant portion of the dojo that they can either resell back to the next generation of teachers or keep living off of as profits into the future. I want them to be able to do this and potentially even retire as martial arts teachers. So
So at this point, they just get shares, increasing numbers of shares in the dojo, but you don't have to give them benefits.
they get health insurance.
So you're providing health insurance plus that's,
Right.
okay. So then your dojo is making enough of a profit each year to pay for 3 full-time instructors plus 3 full-time health benefits.
Right.
How many students do you have?
We have about 160 now, but that's just creeping up from the pandemic. When we get back up to normal, it'll be more like 250. Right now, our middle ranks are anemic because of the pandemic. So we basically have a whole new crop that's filling in. So our beginner classes have a lot of folks, and our intermediate and advanced are small as we're building back up. But yeah, the goal for us, and I, you know, I bring them
And you
in
own
on-
your own building?
Yeah. Yeah. And the building we purchased with the idea that it would be, it's good for, you know, you could have 400 students out of this building. We got this one so that it would be good for us for the next 20 or 30 years. And be fine as a place moving into the future. And of course, then suddenly there was a giant global pandemic and the market crashed, but we're doing fine. We're okay. And I attribute honestly our survival to the fact that we focus on community all that time. Because when it hit the fan, people kept paying dues and people were coming through with our, you know, the different solutions we came up with over the pandemic to survive, so that I never had to stop paying people and everything was okay.
So does Chris and you said Galen, correct?
Yep.
Do they have other jobs or is that their main job?
Nope. They're here all
So
week.
So Chris doesn't teach at the public schools anymore?
Nope. Nope, they're full time.
I bet he spent
Um,
some time with the little person at his house, though.
Yeah, so basically they come in at 9 in the morning and then they go home at noon and they're there for 3 hours and then they come back in here for the afternoon and then different days. Everybody's got 2 days off out of those days, so they're not all having to be here every night. I'm pretty sensitive to that, as after missing, you know, the problem with a dojo that teaches classes to kids after school is that right when kids get out of school, you get busy. So as soon as my kids got home from school, I was gone. And so it was hard being the only teacher for a long time to get to hang out with my kids until the weekend. And so I want to make sure that Chris can go home and spend some time with him, especially once he goes to school.
Can I
Else?
ask you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can I ask how much you charge your students?
So we do a bunch of different, and because of the size of the facility, we can offer lots of different programs and different frequencies. So what we do is it's $100 for your first month. And then if you do twice a week, it's $125 after that. And if you do 4 times a week, it's $160. And if you want to do all of our programs all the time, it's $185. And so most people, once they get pretty advanced, are doing that third option, just because then they can do kickboxing, fitness, and Tai Chi, and Kung Nu, and come to all the different other classes. And, you know, there's team game nights every week and all that stuff's included in it. So some people just come and only do kickboxing or Tai Chi or Kung Nu, but a lot of times once they get really going, they want to do all of it. So, and again, it's a really good value if it's your community. If it was just something you were stopping in to do a couple of times a week, that'd be a lot of money. But if you're here 19, 20 hours a week, and this is where you do your homework and hang out with your friends and, you know, see your buddies and play board games and all that stuff, then it's great.
Do you use Spark or any of those programs?
No, we've used we recently started developing a software with the Studio Boss guys, which is what brings in all the like gamification of attendance and referrals and all that kind of stuff. It is not cheap, but it offers, it's because we're working with the developers, we can customize it a ton, and it has some good tools in it. It lets us automate a lot of procedures, which when you get to the business income part, to me, automation is king. Like anything I can make happen automatically that I don't have to follow up with people about or make phone calls about, or to me, that's huge. It means that all they deal with us on is karate, and all, you know, they deal with websites for money and us for karate. Perfect. That's what I want. So yeah, we currently have it set up where if you sign up for $100 a month, then at the end of the first month, it just asks you, you're going to come twice a week, 4 times a week, unlimited. You pick one online, it starts billing you at that rate. If later on you change your mind, you switch it and you start getting billed at the new rate. And you never even have to tell us. We obviously get reports about it, but so the more we can automate it, the happier I am. And like if you come in, if you get an intro, you book the intro on a calendar, it fills up that spot so that nobody else can come in. You come to the intro. While you're at the intro, it texts you like reminder about the intro and texts you that how to get there. And then while you're there, it sends you the link to sign up for class so that when you're done, I can just say, they say, what do we do next? And be like, well, check your phone. It's right there. And then they just do it at their leisure. They get a discount if they do it right away. And then it signs them up and I get to be just the karate guy, which is perfect. So then this last topic, well, the second to last topic is about developing your upper ranks, which really ties into your leadership development. But I feel like this is one of the big pieces that gets left on the table often. This is the thing I want to bring up. So if you start, let's say you start martial arts, you've defined yourself as a person who's willing to put themselves out there and try new things, right? And then when you get, about the time you get your green belt, you're going to notice there's a lot of people that lose their motivation around green belt. And part of that is because we're asking you to switch from the kind of person who tries new things to the kind of person who sticks with it when it gets hard and lets them self-develop, right? And so if somebody's got both of those things, awesome, they're going to be a great green belt too. But then they get up towards their black belt and they're like, now we're asking you to be somebody who is willing to commit vast amounts of time, far above what their other hobbies have ever said, stretch themselves, bleed, sweat. Like, are you really a fighter who's going to push through this? So now I've asked you to be 3 really different kinds of person. Then you get your black belt and you're like, by the way, now you're a teacher. Really? Are they? I don't know. Like, we want you to suddenly be good at teaching, which is a whole 4th personality type and set of skills. And then after a while of that, like, now I want you to be good at leading people too. So, you know, our ideal martial artist has the natural gifts for all 5 of those things and the grit to push through on any of those things that give them trouble. But I think it's really important to recognize that you're asking them to try a completely different personality on every time that we make one of these changes, which we know is ultimately really, really good for them and the main path to mastery, but isn't totally obvious to everybody that, well, of course you're a teacher now. You got your black belt. It's great. You're going to teach now. So I think it's really important and I think in this situation, it has a lot to do with who you as a head instructor are, what this looks like for your students, because it has a lot to do with what motivation you're able to keep giving them, as opposed to what sort of garden tending you're going to do from the side. And the third position is, are you just going to let the natural born folks get good on their own merits? So are you working towards entirely self-starters, or are you nurturing these behaviors? Because there is the school of thought that what we're doing is we're sort of letting ourselves see who gets really good at this, and then we acknowledge that with rank, right? That's one perspective. There's another perspective that says, well, very few people are going to do that on their own steam. You should nurture that. Well, if you're going to nurture it, that means you're in there too. And you really need to be aware of what your piece of that interaction is. Right? If you are holding some of that leadership or teaching up for them, you need to be on a training wheels program in your mind about how you're going to slowly pull that out and let them be on their own 2 feet with that. And then, like I said, give them some ownership over the outcome. Like, make sure that y'all are aligned in your motivations, and then let them see how they're part of the future of that. So one of the things that you'll, oh, do you have something?
You have to
Yeah.
keep doing that, huh? So you said that, I mean, I see your point where you said people start wearing lots of hats and they become a black belt. And then we make this assumption that they can be a teacher because they've trained for 5 years. And then we ask them to become a leader. Let's say somebody takes physics for 5 years and they become a physicist. That doesn't make them a good teacher at all. Just because somebody takes biology for 4 years doesn't make them a qualified doctor. So Master Dong a long time ago said, everybody can become a black belt. Not everybody should be a black belt. So everybody could get a black belt. Those people that can get a black belt, I don't believe that they are teachers. I don't believe that they are qualified to teach. I think that that is a big problem in our style, that we believe that just because they got a black belt, that they want to teach or that they should teach. Giving back to the community of the dojo, of helping teach 1 day a week as a black belt is great. But I think that's one of the things we make a mistake with, is that we almost demand our higher ranks to teach, and we cast them out. And we say, teach that beginner class, or teach that weapons class, or you have to do this. And they don't want to do that. They didn't get into the martial arts to become a teacher. They got into the martial arts because they wanted to be a martial artist. They didn't want to be a teacher. They didn't want to be a leader. That's not in their personality. Yes, we believe that it's better to help them, to stretch them. It will help them, but they don't want it. And I think that's one of the reasons why we start to lose some of our higher ranks. I personally have had students, higher ranking students, come to me and say, I'm not interested in teaching. I really just want to train. And I think we're making a mistake by saying, well, you have to be a teacher. I think that's a mistake. You can be an assistant, you can help. But just because you've done the martial arts for 5, 6, 7 years and gotten a black belt, it doesn't make you a teacher. And I don't want to use those people as teachers, because I'm going to start to lose students because they can't teach well.
Right. Yeah, and it's a lot of people are stuck. If you have a really small dojo and you get your first or your second black belt, and you're desperate for help, you might not have a lot of choices. But
You could kill your dojo. You could kill
Sure.
because you'll start losing students because you're using people that they don't know how to be a teacher.
Right.
Teaching, it's called pedagogy. There's an art to being a really good teacher, as you know, and not everybody is good. Not everybody's good at speaking, presenting, or teaching. And I'll work myself to the bone before I'm going to lose students because I have a bad teacher.
Right. And even the people who are talented and gifted need a lot of work to develop that talent. Yeah, you really need to look closely at how people are teaching, what they're teaching. One of the tricky things about it is that we know, those of us who have done this for a long time, that the act of teaching helps you see it from all these new angles that makes you a better martial artist. And so we really would love for everybody to be good at that and engage with that. One of the paths to them understanding was hearing the questions that come from other people that give them these different perspectives. But yeah, you don't want somebody to do a bad job teaching your classes either.
And I don't want to put the onus on the fact that, okay, you have to stay in the dojo, you have to teach. I don't want to do that. I want to keep students that really just want to train. And I think that's one of the problems in Kung Nu, is that we continue to tell our higher ranks, you have to teach. And if we told them, you have to assist, you have to be here 1 hour a week to assist teach, that's different than saying you have to teach. And I'd like to keep my higher ranks. If they just want to train, that's great. If they want to assist, that's great. But I think we should ask ourselves, why are we losing so many higher ranking students? Because they don't come into the martial arts to become a teacher. They come into the martial arts to become a martial artist.
Yeah, and I would say one of the key silver bullets for that is make sure you've got advanced rank classes. Make sure you've got classes where black belt students are getting challenged and learning things.
We
If
had
your
just-
classes have,
We had
what's
classes,
that?
we had, because we had sufficient number of higher ranks instructors, we had classes. And what worked the best was instead of having a separate time, we would do it like Tuesday and Thursday would start at 6:30, and then by 7 it was just for that hour was black belt time. One instructor took everybody else, one instructor took just black belts and above. We taught higher ranking Aikido, higher ranking Judo, higher ranking weapons, higher ranking katas. And so it was just that time for black.
Yep.
We made sure that that was addressed to them.
Yep, and make sure they're doing reps and they're sparring, because if they're just learning a new thing every time, they can feel kind of lost. But yeah, you want to make sure those guys are feeling like they're getting time to train and that they're moving forward with their training, and that a lot of the quantifiable things that, having 20-30 minutes of sparring in every class helps them see themselves getting a lot better at sparring. All right, so we are near the end. There's let's see, what did I not get to? Let's see. Oh, it talked about having leadership project systems, sort of like what Ricky was talking about with all the brown belts having something that they do to sort of give them a taste of how do you start owning some processes, some events, and some leadership. Yeah, I really like having brown belt level leadership projects and black belt level leadership projects, things that are coaching them in how we want them to interact ideally. And so the ones that fall in love with that move forward with it, and the ones that struggle with it, at least they know what we're going for, and they move. They might have to grind through that process, but let's see, what else have I got here? Make sure you're delegating if you have lots of activities and lots of people, both to develop leadership and to not run yourself ragged. And let's see, and then in terms of income, if you're trying to develop if your dojo needs more money, or you're trying to run it as a business, or even if you're not running it as a business, but you'd like to be able to afford more equipment or anything like that. Like I said, automation is really helpful. Your price points versus your perceived value is something you should look really closely at. Like a lot of times we go super low on dues because we want it to be less about money and more about community. And then we end up with people that don't value it as much because they didn't pay very much for it. Not to say that everything should be the most expensive one all the time, but if it feels like the discount one, people are going to kind of treat it like the discount one. If you sell a thing for half price, people kind of feel like they're going to buy up a bunch of them and have liberty with it. Anyway, take a serious look at it. If you'd be surprised sometimes when like for us, it comes up the most with summer camps, because our dues are a fairly normal rise, but we play with the price and the way we do summer camp all the time. And it's a fairly low risk way to check how people feel about the price of different things. And because of the automation thing I'm trying to do, normally we have this whole like benefit structure for if you come to more than, every camp you come to makes all your camps cheaper, and siblings make it cheaper. And so it starts at this sort of high price per week, but if you come to a bunch of them and you bring people, it gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And because of the way the automation was working, we couldn't do that this year. And so it wasn't the highest version of that. It was just like above the middle, and they're all sold out. All 6 weeks are completely sold out. So we're like, whoa, okay. So people are not, they weren't signing up because of the discount. That wasn't the thing that was getting them. And honestly, the ease of signing up, making that easy on them was more powerful than the group discounts or any of that kind of stuff. But you can only figure that out about your community by testing it out. Some people do like sign-up fees. I don't think that's very popular within Cognu. So the industry standard at this point is, don't put any barrier in the way of them getting started. What you want them to do is come in and realize they really like being there. So don't make that hard. Make sure that you cover yourself for, the cost of their uniform or whatever your expense is for them coming for a month, and then trust your program to make them be something that they want to stay for. And if they're not staying, then ask yourself why. What goes on in the first month? They got their uniform, they came to 3 classes, 4 classes, 5 classes. Why didn't they see themselves having a future there? Was it because they don't belong in your community and they didn't feel right? Or was it because it wasn't easy enough for them to see how they fit in? Did they not feel heard? Did they not, what was it? And, you can follow up with them, or you can just look closely at your system to try to see where are we losing people. So those are the big categories to me. When I think about growing a dojo, I think about not that one of those is important and the others aren't, but sort of like those are the pillars that are holding us up. And if one of them's weaker, I want to know and address it and spend more time growing that piece so that it evens everything out. So what kinds of questions you guys have? We got about 8 minutes left.
What are you going to discuss? Am I muted again?
No,
I'm-
you're
Are you going to discuss the various revenue sources that you have available in your dojo?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So our main thing is obviously just dues. We have a shop out front, and at this point we've tried to make it completely online. There's the online shop, and people can buy things on their phones basically, and so they could do it while they're at the dojo, or they can do it when they leave, and there's a QR code next to anything you could buy, so that they just go bloop and they click on it and it takes them to the shop, and if they're already a customer, their credit card's already in there, and they just say, yes, I want one of these, and then they walk away with it. So we our other biggest revenue aside from that is we've developed a nonprofit so that we can have events through the nonprofit and raise money for scholarships. Our scholarships are mostly not, it was designed for somebody comes in and they want to train, but they can't afford it. Well, you can apply for the scholarship. Most of our scholarships go to students that are training that are going to have to stop because something's happening with money. And we pay for that gap so that they can fill in the gap to when they're financially solidly. And so they don't have to interrupt their training. The scholarship takes over for them because they've already demonstrated they're committed to the community and they're a regular student. I don't want to lose them just because something weird's going on in their life. Somebody gets a divorce, somebody loses a house, something goes on, they lose a job. So it's a nice way to fill in for them in that gap. We also applied for a grant so that we can do an after-school program at a local school where none of the kids would ever be able to afford to train. So that way we can just show up there and the state's going to pay for that. And then other than that, it's just our other programs. So we have programs, the Tai Chi, the teen game night, the kickboxing, those are sort of separate programs that feed into it as well. But those are, and then summer camps, day camps, summer camps is a big chunk, which we really started just to level out the dip in summer attendance, people pausing themselves over the summer. But it more than levels that out. And it also gives us a chance to offer jobs for our awesome teenage, green and brown belts that are looking for ways to help, so that when they can help with summer camp and we can pay them with that. And they don't just get to do it. They have to get trained over the course of the year doing birthday parties and stuff like that. We do birthday parties and other kinds of parties. We don't make a ton of money on that. It's just a great way to get people excited about the dojo. So we keep that pretty cheap and, try to get groups of 20 strangers in here. And then make sure a lot of people know that those parties are a lot of fun. We had a big party of all the surgery residents at the med school recently, and it was like a giant fight party of surgery residents and their coordinators. And man, the surgery residents want to hear about big sharp swords. They love that. And anyway, so we had a great time. Somebody said they have two other questions.
That's me.
Yeah.
Just, you mentioned the phone pads. Can you make those available either online or somewhere? And also,
Yeah, sure.
and there was somebody else that said they had similar sort of thing. And then you mentioned a program tracker that you keep track of your students. Is that something that you can email us about?
Yeah, the one I have, you don't want. It's too expensive.
Okay.
But there are a lot that will do that. There's if you just want something to track attendance and even help you take credit cards, there are a variety of them. And like a phone service, you probably need to switch every 3 or 4 years. But you want to kind of get in on them and find one that's the level of complexity you want to input. And
I think Sunming Shu has one. I'm not
yeah.
person in charge
Did you
of
guys
all
do
that.
Champions Way? Did you end up with Champions Way?
I think so. Rachel and Gordon handle all that. And we've got
Yeah.
a program where people come into the dojo, they can sign themselves in, keeps track, if people remember to sign themselves in. So,
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to do that, but yeah.
I highly recommend, am I still on? Hello?
Yes,
Am I still on?
yes.
I highly recommend that next year when the Martial Arts Super Show is live again, I highly recommend that you attend this event at least once in your life. They have a tremendous, great variety of extremely well-educated and versed instructors. They have a terrific variety of the types of classes you can take. And their floor area where they have retail sales, as well as what Tanner mentioned as regards computer specialists that track your attendance and can help you with other things. It's a wonderful, wonderful event. You can do it for relatively inexpensive. If you sign up early enough, you can get hotel rooms, rather inexpensive. If you don't want to pay for a hotel room, you're welcome to stay with me. I live about 30 minutes from the Strip, but it's a great motivating event that I believe you should attend once in your life. You will meet outstanding martial artists, outstanding people in business and creativity and motivation.
Ricky,
Yeah, the
when
year
is it?
that the pandemic struck, we were planning on going there.
Right, you guys were planning on coming as a group. It's
Yeah, and I would love to
first
do, if we shared a couple of hotel rooms and could do this conversation all weekend and train and talk about these things all weekend.
I went in 2019 and it was phenomenal. It's always the first week of July, the last week of June, somewhere from about the 28th, 29th of June, or the first week of July, right before it
Yeah.
ends, 4th of July. But it's wonderful.
Yeah, well, I was planning on going next year, so if other people want to do that, that would be super cool.
Spend a couple days with us, take you over
There you
there. But
What's it called?
you can train with people as
go.
far as
Martial Arts Super
physical.
Show.
It's called the Martial Arts Super Show. One of the biggest contributors is Century Martial Arts. They have classes throughout the day. You can have classes on throwing techniques, jujitsu, sparring. I got to take a class with Benny the Jet, your greatest. Everybody knows who Benny the Jet is. Should know who Benny the Jet is. I got to meet put Bill Wallace and take a class with him. I got to meet Chuck Norris. They have
Tanner, did you have any closing words you wanted to wrap up with?
Well, real quick, Mark, did you have a second question? You're muted.
Unmute, Mark.
yes, I will. You answered my questions, the phone pads and the
Okay.
phone tracker. Thank you.
Gotcha. Yeah, as far as the Super Show, like I said, I'm planning on going there. If enough people want to go, let's get a big suite where there's like a living room area and a bunch of stuff like that and go for it. Cool. Well, I'm not going this year, but 23, I'll probably go. All right, so yeah, no, in closing, please let's continue this conversation. I would love to make sure that we are giving each other ways to develop our dojos in all these ways. I want to make sure that conversation continues. And so whether that's over the course of the year or next training camp, but keep some of these in mind. If you have any questions about any of this, or you just want us to have some of these notes or lists, just shoot me an email and I'll keep talking to you about all this.
Thanks for the
Great,
info. It was
thanks.
great.
Thanks,
Absolutely,
Tanner.
absolutely. Thank you, guys. Let's go do this Rocky demo.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you have just enough time to warm up.